Hey, horror fans! Once again, it is me, the Horror Miser Mani G. Continuing my series with the Exorcist film series, it's time to talk about Exorcist II The Heretic. Yes!
Don't fuck with them hoes.
Now, Exorcist II The Heretic is a 1977 American horror film. It was directed by John Boorman and written by William Goodhart. Now, of course, it's based upon the characters created by William Peter Bailey. The film stars Linda Blair, Richard Burton, Louise Fletcher, Maxwell Sydow, and James Earl Jones. Ooh, what a cast! Now, in this film, a teenage girl once possessed by a demon finds it still lurks within her. Meanwhile, the priest investigates the death of the girl's exorcist. Just couldn't leave it alone, could you? Now, I'm sure people who have subscribed to my channel, I'm pretty sure people who have seen me on other live streams knows my feelings when it comes to Exorcist II The Heretic. No, I did make a film talking about this video some time ago, but this time I'm just going to be doing my standard review and why the film fell so badly. So I won't be ranting and raving like most people have seen me when I talk about Exorcist II The Heretic. So this is going to be a standard review for the Exorcist film series. Now, first off, during the 70s, well, there were plenty of sequels that were released back during that time. Not many of them were horror sequels. None of those type of sequels are being made. Yeah, you had the Rocky 2, you had French Connection 2, and obviously you had the Godfather Part 2, but we never really saw any sequels for horror films. I think the only one you can call it a horror sequel during the 70s was Scream Blackula Scream. So when word got out that a sequel to one of the scariest horror films was being made, everyone was excited. I mean, I know I was. And no, especially after seeing the trailer that was released, it's like, wow, this is gonna be fantastic. I mean, it got everyone pumped, everyone's excited. Linda Blair is black. We see that trailer, and everyone couldn't wait to go see Exorcist II The Heretic. Unfortunately, and just like everyone else, I was so disappointed in what we saw in this sequel to The Exorcist, simply called Exorcist II The Heretic. Now, after seeing Philip Lamont failed to exorcise a demon from a possessed Latin American girl, he's assigned to investigate the death of Father Langstir Marin. Now, his investigation eventually will lead him to meet Reagan McNeil, the girl that was possessed by a demon that Father Merlin, along with Father Karras, exorcised the demon from her. Now, his investigation will lead him and Reagan down a dark path of evil that could end both their lives. That's kind of what the film was supposed to be about. That's what I'm guessing. That's kind of the premise that we have. He tried to exorcise his demon from a Latin American girl. That failed. He goes back to the van again. They assigned him to investigate the death of Father Marin. He eventually winds up meeting Reagan, and eventually, his investigation will lead him down this path. Where they're supposed to confront evil and all this other stuff like that. That's kind of what the film is supposed to be about. Now, again, I kind of didn't mind the premise of the film, as I'm sure the filmmakers were a lot of under pressure to come up with a plausible story that fans of the first movie would enjoy. I mean, you do understand you're talking about one of the most scariest films that was ever made. You're now tracked. You've now been brought up to create a sequel for the film, and you got your work cut out for him. It's like, what can we do to top that? How can we do that? It's kind of an impossible task. Now, the first problem was that director William Friedkin and writer William Peter Bailey had no desire to make a sequel due to the issues they were having with Warner Brothers and with each other. They were suing the studio. They were suing each other. They were clashing back and forth. So neither one of them really had no desire when Warner Brothers reached out, hey, look, we're going to do a sequel. And neither men wanted any part to do with it at all. So Warner Brothers brought in playwright William Goodhart to do the sequel, and they got John Boorman to direct. Now, while they did get Linda Blair to return to play Reagan McNeil, they couldn't get Ellen Burstyn to return to play Chris McNeil. That's the reason why we don't see her in the film, and she's back with her, I guess, Chris's assistant in this film. I mean, they even brought in veteran actors Richard Burton and Louise Fletcher, but they couldn't do anything to bring any life to Borman's script. Now, I'll say this. I guess I kind of understand what type of script Goodman was trying to create here. But the first problem I have with the movie is taking away the supernatural element and try to put some weird scientific method that was rather dull and flat and really didn't make no sense. What, Reagan, some type of psychic now? What that's stupid. It didn't make any sense to me. Now, one thing I do have to admit, I thought that giving the demon who possessed Reagan some background was a good idea, and the name Pazuzu sounds scary. You know, when you look like he's some type of an Ariasonic demon, if you look at the folklore from Pazuzu, and I thought that was kind of interesting to give the demon some background. And like I said, you know, that name sounds scary and evil like that. So I really got to give, you know, Goodhart credit for coming up with some type of background on the demon named Pazuzu, because now that name is synonymous when it comes to horror. However, the execution of Father Lamont's journey to find Kumoko, I think that's how you pronounce his name, a young African boy that Pazuzu possessed several years ago, takes the film in another type of direction. It sounds like to me that whenever he wrote it down, kind of was interesting, but when you look at it on film, that kind of takes away all the aspects away from Reagan, and now you're pursuing this other part of the film that didn't make any sense to me. It's like you're taking this film in another direction, and you're taking away all the elements that made the first film such a fantastic horror film. Another thing that I didn't like is the reason why Pazuzu possessed both Regan and Kumiko, as it takes away the mystery as to why the demon did it in the first place. I won't reveal that aspect of the film, but when I looked at it, it's like, that's odd. That you know, it's kind of like with Michael Myers. You know, why does Michael Myers kills? Because he's just plain evil. You know, we don't need a reason why. I mean, just like when Billy Loomis talks about in Scream, it's all more better if the person doesn't have a reason to kill. And then that's the reason why I don't like Michael Myers's Thorn trilogy, because like, no, we don't need a reason for Michael to kill, just like we don't need a reason why Pazuzu possessed Regan. That's the mystery aspect of it, because he's a demon. They simply just want to do it because that's what they want to do. And I thought giving him a reason, that's the reason why he possessed these two people, kind of takes away the horror aspect out of it. A huge, and I do mean huge, problem that I have with this film are the practical effects or special effects, which are some of the worst I've seen. And it's such a shame, given how much praise their first film received for the special effects that were used. I mean, you talk about a drop down in practical effects or special effects, you know, from the high standard that The Exorcist received for the practical effects during the 70s. It was very good. And what we see in this film, it's total different. It's totally different. Now, even though this was filmed during the 70s, they could have done a better job with the locust scene than putting a goddamn fake bug on the stick and having it flying in front of the camera. I mean, there's this one part of the scene for about a good almost 3 minutes. We got this locust in front of the camera like he's Bazuzu flying around. It's like, oh, come on, guys, you can do better than that. Come on. You know, it's interesting that the budget for this film is actually even greater than the original. I think they spent 14 million in this film. They only spent 12 million on the first film. Yet the original one looks like a more expensive film than this one. I don't know what happened here. No, even using veteran actors like the veteran actors, you know, Richard Burton and Louise Fletcher, and having Linda Blair return as Reagan, you have all these aspects. You got James Earl Jones in the film right here. It's like all these great actors and actresses. Unfortunately, this was a very, very poor attempt by the filmmakers and Warner Brothers. I mean, it's just sad. Now, some people believe the studio should have waited longer before greenlighting the sequel. You know, as for me, the story that Goodhart gave us, as I mentioned before, it's flat, it's weak, it's unimaginative. Unimaginative. I don't know. Maybe, like I said before, maybe on paper it looked fine, because sometimes when you write a script and you might do a read over it, it actually looks fine on paper, but the execution of this is just, it's just sad. You know, Probably back when I was younger, I probably didn't understand filmmaking and sequels and what makes a great film, and then you have a sequel. Because now, since I'm older, I understand a little bit better than what filmmaking is. I'm sure there was no way the filmmaker was going to create a sequel that would live up to what The Exorcist did, because no one never seen a film like that before. Again, because the cultural impact this film made. It's considered one of the greatest horror films ever made, and you really not going to be able to top that. However, instead of creating at least a decent, even a fair sweet sequel, they went on to create not only one of the worst horror films ever made, but one of the worst movies ever made. Yeah, it has that distinction as one of the worst films ever made. You know, I guess that's why it took almost 13 years before 20th Century Fox would release The Exorcist III, and had the filmmakers ignore everything that happened in this particular film. I'll talk about that when I review Exorcist 3. But yeah, it took 13 years before 20th Century Fox and I think Morgan Creek went on ahead and released Exorcist 3, and just ignored the events in this particular film, because I think no one wanted anything to do with this movie anymore. Now, if I were to rank this film as far as my five bloody gold coins is concerned, um, it's very hard to even try to give this anything at all. But I'll say this, as much as this is such a bad horror film, I've seen worse horror film than this. So I will give it, if I were to give it, I would give it one of my five bloody gold coins, because I've seen worse horror films than The Exorcist 2. Creepers Cheapers Reborn comes into mind because of the horrible green screen effects. Obviously, some of the others, such as The Bye Bye Man, Slender Man, Devil's Due, The Apparition, Devereaux, or The Flood. Some of those are some of the independent horror films I've seen so far this year. Like I said before, yes, The Exorcist 2 is a bad horror film. And like I said before, it's not the worst I've seen, but it is a bad horror film. So there you go. That is my video and review of Exorcist II The Heretic. I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, please give me a thumbs up, like, and share, because it really does help up that YouTube algorithm. Have you actually seen Exorcist II The Heretic? What do you think about it? Do you agree that this is one of the worst horror films you ever saw? Leave your comments in the comment section below and tell me what you thought about the film. Also, if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. That way you'll be notified anytime when I put up new videos such as this one. Once again, my name is Lamont Smith, better known as the Horror Miser Monty G. And always remember that horror rules. Ha ha ha. And I see you in my next video. You guys stay safe out there.